Hello, this is a speech about Vincent van Gogh, written by me, obviously. How much sadness there is in life, still it won't do to become depressed. One should turn to other things, and the right things work, but there are times when only one finds peace of mind in the realization, I too shall not be spared by unhappiness. Vincent van Gogh is one of the most famous painters of all time, but he was a very troubled man who has had a lot of hardships throughout his life, although some would argue that that was what made him so good. Sadly, it wasn't until after he died that he was recognized as such an amazing artist. What am I in the eyes of most people? A good-for-nothing, an eccentric and disagreeable man, somebody who has had no position in society and never will have. Very well, even if it were true, I should want to show by my work that there is in the heart of such an eccentric man, of such a nobody. Vincent van Gogh was born on March 30th, 1853. His father was Reverend Theodorus van Gogh of the Protestant Church. Vincent was tormented by severe mental instability, lived malnourished and overworked in poverty, died by his own hand, and ultimately changed the outlook on art for the rest of history. He had 3 sisters, Elizabeth, Anna, Will, and 2 brothers, Theo and Cor. Vincent always thought that he would be a minister like his father. He began a ministry with the miners of Borinage. I don't know. His interaction with the miners inspired some of his paintings, as he was fascinated with depicting peasant life. After a few years with the miners, Vincent decided he wanted to become an artist, even though he didn't have any skill or know nothing about art except for a couple years' experience of being an art dealer in London. His brother Theo encouraged and supported Vincent financially to become one of the most well-known artists in the whole world. When Vincent had turned 15, his family was very poor, so he had to quit a job. He had to quit school to get a job to help support his family. He got a job with his uncle as an art dealer. In 1873, he was transferred to a dealership in London and fell in love with his landlady's daughter. The Van Gogh proposed to her, but after being rejected, he became angry and went through fits of rage at his job, yelling at people not to buy the art, causing him to obviously be fired. In 1878 is when he went to go to work as a missionary with the coal miners. Vincent had a great spiritual crisis living with the coal miners and among the poor. He gave away all of his possessions and was fired from the missionary for too literal interpretation of Christian teaching. After being cast out, he became really depressed. He said, "They think I'm a madman. Because I wanted to be a true Christian, they turned me out like a dog, saying that I was causing a scandal." He decided to start drawing after this and realized his true vocation was to be an artist. Vincent van Gogh was mostly a self-taught artist. He said that before you can master color, you must first master black and white. He copied many prints and practiced 19th century drawing manuals and lesson books. He first worked on making figure drawings and mastering landscapes, trying to get them in the right perspective. Sorry. In 1882, I'm sorry. I'm a mess right now. I'm just trying to get this done. In 1882, he finished his first independent paintings in watercolor and then decided to try working with oil paints. His uncle commissioned 2 sets of Hague landscapes, which he made of railways and nursery gardens. In 1884 and 1885, he worked on more than 40 works of peasant heads to master figures. In 1881, Vincent began a relationship with a pregnant prostitute whose name was San Humick. She already had a child out of wedlock. Vincent was deeply shunned by his cousin for this relationship. Vincent practiced his skills of drawing by using Humic as a model whenever possible. He soon became irritable and broke off the relationship. He started studying art in Belgium, where he created the very famous Potato Eaters in 1885. The Potato Eaters is considered Vincent van Gogh's first masterpiece. He was not yet that experienced as a painter, only just learning techniques. His goal for this painting was to paint people who were existing in natural environment. The emotions in each of their faces makes you feel like you know what they are thinking. The Potato Eaters became a success, but sadly not in his lifetime. After the failure of the Potato Eaters, he lightened his dark palette of painting and traveled to Antwerp, where he discovered artist Rubens and purchased lots of Japanese prints, which inspired his art and new techniques. You can see the Japanese inspiration in his painting The Flower Orchid. In 1886, he traveled to Paris, where he met other famous painters who inspired his bold, unconventional style of painting, including Pissarro and Monet. In 1888, he traveled to Arles and went to a school of art. There he met Gauguin. Vincent started painting lots of sunflowers to decorate Gauguin's room, which later became one of his signature pieces. At the end of 1888, the first signs of Vincent van Gogh's mental illness showed through. He suffered from types of epilepsy, psychotic attacks, and delusions. Vincent and Gauguin were getting along great, but Van Gogh was going through fits of madness, which led to Gauguin wanting to leave. When he found out about Gauguin wanting to leave, Vincent pursued him with a knife, but he was able to stop himself. Later that night, he cut his own earlobe off and brought it to a brothel to give to a prostitute named Rachel, saying, "Guard this object carefully." Van Gogh left blood everywhere, all over the walls, and laid in his bed soaked in more blood. The police found him in his bed of blood and thought that he had committed suicide, but later Gauguin came in and saw that he was still alive. Gauguin told the police officer that if Vincent asked for him when he wakes up, to say that he moved to Paris. Vincent was brought to recover in a hospital and continually asked for his friend Gauguin. Vincent admitted himself to Saint Remy de Provence mental asylum at the end of 1888. Hundreds of physicians and psychiatrists have diagnosed Vincent van Gogh over the years. He has been diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, bipolar disorder, Thujuan poisoning, lead poisoning, hypergraphia, and sunstroke. Vincent was born with a brain lesion which was aggravated by the use of absinthe, causing epilepsy. Because of his many episodes of mania, he is believed to have either bipolar or manic depression. To counteract his mental disabilities, Vincent gorged down absinthe, a toxic alcoholic beverage which has a chemical called Thujuan. Finally, our high intake of Thujuan can make you see objects in yellow, which is believed to be linked in his obsession with yellow and other bright colors. Vincent's paints contained lead, which he actually would nibble on while painting. In some of his episodes, he chugged paint and kerosene to poison himself. Vincent spent lots of times outdoors painting for hours. Because of how much he was in the sun, he suffered from sunstroke, causing nausea and a bad stomach. During Vincent's time in the asylum, he created the most famous Starry Night. When he got out to the asylum, he got in contact with his brother Theo, moved to Alvers to be close with him and his family in 1890. He is starting to become very happy with the new scenery and with the new scenery to paint, being close to his family but far away from the capital so he wouldn't get triggered and overwhelmed. Van Gogh painted 70 paintings in the last 70 days before he attempted suicide by shooting himself. He had dreaded the return of manic attacks. Theo moved to Amsterdam, which completely destroyed Vincent and put him more into his depression. Sunday, July 27th, he went on his usual routine to go paint in the fields. He returned late with a bullet in his chest. He exclaimed, that he had tried to shoot himself in the heart but missed his heart on all of his vital organs. 2 doctors rushed over and although he didn't die from the initial shot, he died 2 days later from infection of the wound. After Vincent died, his brother Theo collected all of his arts from Paris, but died 6 months later. Theo's wife took all of Vincent's paintings to Holland and got them published to give him the recognition he deserved. He became famous almost instantly and is still to this day being heavily recognized as the best painter in the world. Vincent thought his life was terrible, unaccomplished, and a waste of time, but once he died, he became inspiration to all artists. He was poor and unknown throughout his whole life, selling 1 painting during his lifetime. Now his paintings have been sold for hundreds and millions, a record amount. He was also featured in a blockbustering expeditions after his death. That's all. Thank you. I know this isn't the best speech I like. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm sorry that this is so late, because first my Wi-Fi wasn't working, and then I tried sending it and uploading it, and it wasn't working, and so now I have to remake them, and my friend just tried to commit suicide, so I hope this puts me as passing, at least. Thank you.